Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the Earth disappeared. One moment he was looking down at the blue marble through the window of the International Space Station, and the next moment something massive blocked his view. He dropped his coffee pouch and pressed his face against the glass. A huge crystal structure floated between the station and Earth. It was bigger than any building Jake had ever seen. The crystal was clear like glass, but also seemed to glow with a soft blue light from inside. As Jake watched, more crystals appeared around the planet. They moved into position like soldiers taking their posts. Jake grabbed the radio. "Houston, this is the ISS. We have a situation up here. There are massive objects surrounding Earth. I repeat, unknown objects are surrounding Earth." The voice from Houston crackled back. "ISS, we see them too. Stand by for orders. Down on Earth." Dr. Lisa Carter was running through the halls of the Global Defense Initiative building in Colorado. She had been sleeping when her phone rang with an emergency call. Now she was looking at screens showing the crystal structures from every angle. Satellites, telescopes, and ground stations all showed the same thing. Earth was surrounded. "Many," Lisa asked her assistant, Alex Rodriguez. 12 large structures. They're positioned at equal distances around the planet. Each one is about 2 miles long and half a mile wide. Alex was a language expert who had worked on trying to decode signals from space for years. Today, his job became much more important. Lisa picked up the red phone that connected her directly to the president. "Sir, we have confirmation. There are 12 massive alien structures surrounding Earth. They appeared within the last 10 minutes. The president's voice was calm but serious. "Are they hostile?" "I don't know yet, sir. They're just sitting there." Colonel Pete Hamilton burst into the room. He was a military man who had seen action in 3 wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Dr. Carter, our radar shows smaller objects coming out of those crystals." Everyone turned to look at the main screen. Ships were emerging from the crystal structures. The ships were beautiful in a strange way. They looked like they were made of liquid metal that flowed and changed shape as they moved. Some were silver, others were deep blue like the ocean. They were nothing like the angular fighter jets and space shuttles that humans built. The alien ships spread out across Earth's atmosphere. They moved in perfect formation, like a dance that had been practiced 1,000 times. Some ships went to the North Pole, others to the South. Some positioned themselves over major cities, while others took up posts over the oceans. Jake Morrison watched from the space station as one of the ships came close to him. It was about the size of a school bus, but moved without any visible engines or exhaust. The ship stopped about 100 feet away from the station. Jake could see no windows or doors, just the smooth flowing surface. Then it spoke, not with words. But somehow Jake understood the meaning directly in his mind. The voice was calm and musical, like wind chimes on a gentle day. Like when chimes on a gentle day. "We are the Zalani Protectorate. Your world has been chosen for protection under the Galactic Preservation Protocol. You are safe now." The same message appeared on every television, radio, and computer screen on Earth. It came in perfect English, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, and dozens of other languages all at the same time. Dr. Carter stared at the screen. "They're talking to everyone at once. How is that possible?" "Advanced technology," Alex said. "God!" "But listen to what they're saying. They're here to protect us." "From what?" The alien voice continued. "We know you have many questions. We will answer what we can. Your species shows great promise, and it would be tragic if you were lost to the dangers that threaten all young civilizations." Lisa grabbed a microphone connected to the global communication system. "This is Dr. Lisa Carter of the Global Defense Initiative. We speak for the people of Earth. What dangers? What are you protecting us from?" There was a pause. Then the voice came again, somehow directed specifically to the command center. "Dr. Carter, we are pleased to make contact with your leaders. The dangers come from the deep spaces between stars. Ancient evils that consume worlds and civilizations. We have arrived, just in time to shield your beautiful planet. Can you be more specific? Lisa asked. What kind of dangers? Another pause. Now this one felt different, like the aliens were thinking carefully about their answer. Knowledge of the enemy draws the enemy's attention. It is safer for your people not to know the details. Trust that we will protect you. Colonel Hamilton leaned over to Lisa. That's not an answer. That's an excuse. Over the next few hours, the aliens proved they meant what they said about protection. When a large asteroid was detected heading toward Earth, one of the alien ships moved to intercept it. A beam of light shot out from the ship, and the asteroid simply disappeared. No explosion, no debris. It was just gone. The aliens also began helping in other ways. Ships appeared over hospitals around the world and beamed down small devices. Doctors tested the devices. They found they could heal almost any injury or disease in minutes. The devices worked on broken bones, cancer, and even old age. Other ships cleaned the oceans. They removed plastic waste and pollution, making the water clearer than it had been in decades. They repaired damage to coral reefs and helped fish populations grow. Within 3 days, the aliens had made themselves very popular with most people on Earth. They called themselves the Zilani, and their leaders spoke regularly to world governments. The leader said their name was something humans couldn't pronounce, so people just called him Ambassador. But some people were not so trusting. Dr. Kate Sullivan was a marine biologist working off the coast of California. She was studying whale populations when the aliens arrived. After the Zilani cleaned the oceans, Kate expected to see more whales and fish. Instead, in certain areas, she found fewer. Something's wrong, Kate told her research partner, Dr. Ben Torres. Ben was an astronomer who had been using underwater telescopes to study space. The areas where I'm seeing population drops are all places where the alien ships spend a lot of time underwater. Ben looked at Kate's data, was used to finding patterns in numbers and star charts. You're right, and look at this. He showed her his own readings. I've been measuring energy from the crystal structures in space. They're not just floating up there. They're pulling energy from Earth's magnetic field. Why would they need to do that? Kate asked. I don't know. But whatever they're doing, they're drawing power from our planet to do it. Meanwhile, Maria Santos was working at a communication center in Mexico. Her job was to monitor radio signals from around the world. She had always been good at finding patterns in radio chatter, even when it was coded or in foreign languages. Maria was listening to the alien communications, when she noticed something strange. The aliens talked to humans in one way, but when they talked to each other, the signals were different. Using computer programs, she began trying to decode what the aliens said when they thought humans weren't listening. What she found made her blood run cold. The fragments she could understand mentioned things like harvest schedules and population management. There were references to sustainable extraction rates and genetic sampling progress. Maria picked up her phone and called Dr. Carter. I think we need to talk. And not over any communication system the aliens might be monitoring. As the sun set on the 4th day since the aliens arrived, 3 groups of humans were asking the same question the aliens had refused to answer. What were they really protecting Earth from? More importantly, were the protectors actually the threat? 6 months had passed since the Zilani arrived. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Hospitals that once overflowed with sick people now stood nearly empty. The Zilani healing devices had made cancer, heart disease, and even the common cold things of the past. People lived longer and felt stronger than ever before. The oceans were cleaner than they had been in over 100 years. Fish swam in water so clear you could see the bottom even in deep areas. The air was fresher too, as the Zilani had somehow removed pollution from the atmosphere. Many people called it a golden age for humanity, but Dr. Kate Sullivan was not celebrating. She stood on the deck of her research ship, looking at the data from her latest dive. The numbers made no sense. In the areas where Zilani ships patrolled, underwater fish populations had dropped by 60%. Not just one type of fish, but all of them. Whales, dolphins, sharks, even tiny creatures that lived on the sea floor. "Show me the maps again," Kate said to her assistant, Tim Johnson. Tim pulled up the underwater tracking maps on his computer. Red dots showed where Zilani ships had been spotted beneath the waves. Blue areas showed where fish populations had declined. "Every red dot matches a blue area," Tim said quietly. "Whatever they're doing down there, it's killing sea life." Kate had been a marine biologist for 15 years. She'd seen oil spills, pollution, and overfishing damage ocean ecosystems. But she had never seen anything like this. Fish weren't dying from poison or disease. They were simply disappearing. "We need to get closer to one of their underwater operations," Kate said. "That's dangerous. Zilani have told everyone to stay away from their work areas." Kate looked at the empty ocean around her ship. "They said they were here to protect us. But who's protecting the fish?" Meanwhile, Dr. Ben Torres was having his own problems with the Zilani. Ben worked at an observatory in Chile, where he spent his nights studying stars and planets. Since the aliens arrived, he'd been pointing his telescopes at their crystal structures in space. What he found worried him greatly. The crystals were not just floating in orbit around Earth, they were actively drawing energy from the planets. Magnetic field. Ben had measured the energy drain, and it was getting stronger every day. "At this rate, they'll destabilize our magnetic field within 2 years," Ben told his colleague, Dr. Rachel Kim. Rachel looked at the numbers on Ben's computer screen. She was a physicist who understood how magnetic fields protected planets from harmful radiation from space. "If our magnetic field fails, the solar wind will strip away our atmosphere. Earth will become like Mars." "I know," Ben said. "But when I tried to contact the Global Defense Initiative about this, they said the Zilani assured them it was safe." "Did you believe them?" Ben shook his picture of his daughter on his desk. She was only 8 years old. "Would you believe someone who was slowly killing your home, but told you it was for your own good?" In Mexico, Maria Santos was working late again. She had been trying to decode Zilani communications for months. The aliens were careful, but they were not perfect. Sometimes their signals overlapped with human radio frequencies, and Maria could catch fragments of their real conversations. Tonight, she hit the jackpot. A long transmission came through clearly enough for her computers to analyze. It took 3 hours to decode, but when Maria read the translation, she felt sick. The message was a progress report from the Zilani ships to their commanders in the crystal structures. It talked about biological sampling rates and extraction. Efficiency mentioned subject compliance and resistance suppression protocols. But the part that made Maria's hands shake was a section about population reduction schedules. The Zilani were planning to reduce Earth's human population by 40% over the next 10 years. They called it sustainable management. Maria printed the decoded message and locked it in her safe. Then she made a phone call she had been putting off for weeks. "Dr. Carter, this is Maria Santos. We need to meet. We can't do it anywhere the aliens might be watching." 3 days later, a small group of people gathered in an abandoned mine shaft in Nevada. The location was chosen because it was deep, underground and surrounded by metal, or that would block any scanning devices. Dr. Lisa Carter had organized the meeting. She brought Colonel Pete Hamilton and Alex Rodriguez from her team. Dr. Kate Sullivan flew in from California. Dr. Ben Torres came from Chile. Maria Santos drove up from Mexico. "What we're about to discuss cannot leave this room," Lisa said. "If the Zilani find out we're meeting like this, I don't know what they'll do." Kate spoke first. She showed them her data about the declining fish populations. "They're not just cleaning the oceans, they're harvesting everything that lives in them." Ben went next. His charts showed how the Zilani were draining Earth's magnetic field. "At the current rate, our planet will lose its atmospheric protection within 2 years. Then Maria shared her decoded communications. The room fell silent as she read the parts about population reduction and biological sampling. Colonel Hamilton was the first to speak. "They're not protecting us. They're preparing us for harvest." "But why the medicine and the clean environment?" Alex asked. "Why make us healthier if they plan to reduce our population?" Lisa had been thinking about this for weeks. What do farmers do before they harvest their crops? They make sure the crops are healthy and strong. They remove pests and diseases. The horrible truth settled over the group like a dark cloud. The Zilani had not come to protect humanity. It had come to manage humanity like livestock. "We need more proof," Colonel Hamilton said. "If we're going to convince world leaders that our saviors are actually our enemies, we need evidence they can't ignore." Over the next month, the secret group worked carefully to gather more information. Kate used underwater drones to spy on Zilani operations beneath the oceans. She discovered massive processing facilities where sea creatures were being turned into some kind of nutritional paste. Ben found that the Zilani were not just taking energy from Earth's magnetic field, they were also slowly changing the composition of the atmosphere. The changes were making the air better for Zilani biology, but worse for human lungs. Maria intercepted more communications. She learned that the Zilani had been studying human genetics. Through their medical devices, every time someone used a Zilani healing machine, it collected genetic information and sent it back to the crystal structures. The group met again in the mineshaft. This time, they brought more people. Dr. Amy Foster was a computer programmer who specialized in alien technology. Rick Davis was an engineer who had been reverse engineering Zilani devices. "I've been studying their translation machines," Rick said. "They're based on quantum processing, but the principles are not impossible for us to understand. I think we can build our own versions." Amy nodded. "If we can understand their technology, maybe we can find ways to interfere with it." Lisa looked around the room at the dozen people who now knew the truth. "The question is, what do we do with this information? If we tell the world, people might panic. Billions of people depend on Zilani medicine now. If we try to fight them directly, people will die when the medical devices stop working." "There's another problem," Colonel Hamilton added. "The Zilani have made themselves essential to our society. They control our energy grid, our medical system, and our environmental cleanup. If we try to remove them, our civilization might collapse." Kate stared at the ceiling of the mine shaft. "It's the perfect trap. They've made us dependent on them while slowly killing us. Not if we can help it," Maria said. "I've been thinking about their communications. They're not talking to anyone else out there. No reports to a home planet. No requests for backup. I think they're alone." Ben looked up from his notes. "That makes sense. They're running a harvesting operation. They wouldn't want to share the profits with anyone else." "So what are you suggesting?" Lisa asked. Maria smiled for the first time in months. "I'm suggesting that if we can make this operation unprofitable or too dangerous for them, they might decide to leave." Rick nodded slowly. "If they leave, we keep all the technology we've learned from them." Amy grinned. "I like the sound of that." Lisa looked around the room at her fellow conspirators. 6 months ago, they had been ordinary scientists and soldiers. Now they were planning to save the human race from aliens who pretended to be their friends. "All right," Lisa said. "Let's figure out how to make Earth too much trouble for the Zilani to bother with." Outside the mine, Zilani ships continued. Their patrols, unaware that the species they thought they were managing was beginning to bite back. The secret group had been working for 2 months. They called themselves the Earth Defense Network, though they were careful never to use that name where the Zilani might hear it. They met in different locations each time: abandoned buildings, empty caves, even inside old subway tunnels. Dr. Kate Sullivan had made the most shocking discovery yet. Using a small submarine she had modified to avoid Zilani detection, she had gotten close to one of their underwater facilities. What she saw there changed everything. The facility was huge, bigger than a football stadium. It was built like a factory with conveyor belts and processing machines. But instead of making cars or computers, it was processing living creatures from the ocean. Kate watched through her submarine's cameras as thousands of fish, whales, and other sea animals were sorted and processed. Some were ground up into the nutritional paste she had discovered before. Others were carefully dissected, their organs and genetic materials stored in containers. But the worst part was a section where the Zilani were doing something to living dolphins and whales. They were keeping them alive while studying their brains and nervous systems. Kate had to turn away from the cameras when she saw the pain in the animals' eyes. "They're not just harvesting food," Kate reported to the group at their next meeting. "They're studying every form of life on Earth. They want to understand how our biology works. Dr. Ben Torres had his own disturbing news. His measurements showed that the Zilani were not just changing Earth's atmosphere slowly, they were testing different atmospheric compositions in small areas around the planet. I think they're experimenting, Ben said. They're trying to find the perfect balance that keeps humans healthy enough to be useful, but makes the planet more suitable for their own species. Maria Santos had decoded more communications. The new messages revealed the true scope of the Zilani operation. They were not just on Earth. They had done this same thing to dozens of other planets across the galaxy. Each planet has a different timeline, Maria explained. Some they harvest quickly, taking everything and leaving. Others they manage for longer periods, keeping the native species alive, but controlled. Earth is in the long-term category. Why? Asked Alex Rodriguez. Because humans are useful to them, Maria said, reading from her translation. We're creative, adaptable, and we reproduce quickly. They want to keep us around as a workforce. Dr. Amy Foster had been working with Rick Davis to understand Zilani technology better. They had made some amazing breakthroughs. By studying the healing devices and translation machines, they had learned how to build their own quantum processors. The good news is that their technology is not magic, Amy said. It's just very advanced. The better news is that we can modify it to work against them. Rick nodded. I've figured out how to create interference signals that can disrupt their communications. And Amy has found a way to make their own devices report false information back to them. What kind of false information? Asked Dr. Lisa Carter. Amy smiled. Whatever we want them to believe. The group had been planning their resistance carefully. They knew they could not fight the Zilani with weapons. The aliens were too advanced and too powerful, but they could fight them with deception, the same way the Zilani had been deceiving humanity. Their plan had 3 parts. First, they would make the Zilani think that Earth was becoming unsuitable for their operations. Second, they would create the illusion that other dangerous aliens were coming to Earth. Third, they would sabotage Zilani operations in ways that looked like natural problems rather than human interference. Colonel Pete Hamilton was in charge of recruiting people for the resistance. He was careful to choose people who would not be missed if they had to disappear for a while. Military personnel on leave, scientists between jobs, engineers who worked alone. We need people in every major city, Hamilton explained. When we start our operations, we need to hit the Zilani everywhere at once. The first test of their plan came when Rick and Amy finished building their interference device. It was about the size of a microwave oven and could disrupt Zilani communications within a 5-mile radius. They tested it near a Zilani patrol ship that regularly flew over the desert in Arizona. When Rick activated the device, the alien ship began flying in circles, clearly confused. After 10 minutes, the ship flew away and did not return for 3 days. It works, Rick said excitedly. If we can build enough of these devices, we can blind their entire communication network. But success came with danger. The Zilani began investigating the communication disruption. They sent more ships to patrol the area where the test had taken. Lisa realized they needed to be more careful. Can't let them know we're behind this, she told the group. If they discover organized human resistance, they might decide to implement their population reduction plan early. Maria had an idea. What if we make them think the interference is coming from space? I can create fake signals that look like they're from other alien species. That's brilliant, said Ben. They think hostile aliens are jamming their communications. They'll focus on defending against outside threats instead of looking for human saboteurs. Over the next month, the resistance group grew from 12 people to over 200. They were scientists, soldiers, engineers, ordinary citizens who had figured out that something was wrong with their alien protectors. Each new member was carefully tested to make sure they were not Zilani agents. Kate led underwater missions to sabotage the Zilani processing facilities. Her team used small explosive devices that Rick had designed to look like equipment failures rather than bombs. They contaminated genetic samples and destroyed months of research. Ben organized teams to interfere with the energy collection systems on the crystal structures. They used modified satellites to beam focused energy pulses at the crystals, causing power fluctuations that looked like natural solar interference. Amy and Rick built more communication jammers, and distributed them to resistance cells around the world. Soon, Zilani ships were experiencing communication problems on every continent. But the biggest breakthrough came when Maria decoded a priority communication from the Zilani leadership. The message revealed something that changed the entire resistance. Strategy, they're not the only ones, Maria announced at an emergency meeting. The Zilani are part of a larger galactic empire, but they're operating on Earth without official approval. Lisa leaned forward. What do you mean? They're running an illegal operation? If their superiors found out they were here, they would be in serious trouble. That's why they've been so secretive about the real threats they claim to be protecting. Alex understood immediately. There are no threats. They made up the story about ancient evils to justify being here. Exactly, Maria said, and that gives us leverage. If we can make their operation look like a failure, they'll have to leave before their own people discover what they've been doing. Hamilton smiled grimly. So we don't need to defeat them militarily. We just need to make them look incompetent. The resistance began phase 2 of their plan. Instead of just disrupting Zilani operations, they started making Earth look like it was under attack by other alien forces. Maria created elaborate fake communications that suggested multiple hostile species were approaching. Ben used radio telescopes to broadcast signals into space that would look like distress calls from a planet under siege. Amy programmed the Zilani's own sensors to detect phantom ships that did not exist. Rick designed devices that could make Zilani equipment malfunction in ways that looked like enemy sabotage. Soon, the aliens were seeing attacks everywhere, even though the only enemies they faced were the humans they thought they controlled. The plan was working better than anyone had hoped. Zilani communications became frantic as they reported multiple system failures and apparent attacks from unknown forces. Their underwater facilities suffered constant equipment breakdowns. Their energy collectors became increasingly unreliable, but Lisa knew they were running out of time. Zilani were getting suspicious, and some of their investigations were getting close to uncovering human resistance cells. We need to push them to the breaking point, Lisa told her commanders. One big operation that makes them decide Earth is too much trouble to bother with. Hamilton nodded. What do you have in mind? We make them think they're under attack by something too powerful for them to handle. Something that threatens not just their operation on Earth, but their entire fleet. Maria looked up from her computer. I think I know how to do that, but we're going to need every person we have, and we're only going to get one chance. Outside, Zilani ships continued their patrols, but their formation was no longer perfect. Equipment failures and false alarms were making them nervous. The predators were beginning to feel like prey, and they did not like the feeling at all. The final operation began at exactly midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. In 200 cities around the world, resistance members activated their devices at the same moment. Rick Davis had spent 3 months building enough interference generators to cover the entire planet. Now they all turned on together. Dr. Lisa Carter stood in the abandoned mine shaft that had become their command center. Screens showed reports coming in from every continent. The plan they called Phantom Storm was the most complex deception in human history. London team reports activation successful, called out Amy Foster from her bank of computers. Tokyo confirms. Signal transmission, added Alex Rodriguez. Sydney is broadcasting false radar signatures, said another voice. On the screens, Lisa could see the effect their operation was having. Zilani ships all over the world were receiving conflicting information. Their sensors showed enemy fleets approaching from 6 different directions. Their communication systems were being jammed by signals that appeared to come from deep space. Dr. Ben Torres was coordinating the fake space attacks from his observatory in Chile. Using every radio telescope on Earth, his team was broadcasting signals that made it look like a massive alien armada was approaching the solar system. The Zilani are trying to contact their crystal structures, Ben reported, but our interference is blocking most of their communications. Maria Santos was the heart of the deception. She had spent weeks creating fake alien languages in battle. Communications. Now her computers were broadcasting these false messages on frequencies the Zilani would recognize. Enemy fleet requesting surrender of Zilani forces, Maria announced, reading from one of her fake transmissions. Zilani response indicates panic. They're asking for emergency evacuation procedures. But the most dangerous part of the operation was happening underwater. Dr. Kate Sullivan led a team of divers to the largest Zilani processing facility in the Pacific Ocean. Their job was to plant devices that would make the facility look like it had been destroyed by enemy weapons. Kate swam through the dark water toward the massive underwater structure. She carried a backpack full of Rick's special explosives. These were not designed to kill anyone, but to create this specific type of damage that would look like an attack by advanced alien weapons. The facility was huge and heavily guarded by Zilani underwater vehicles. But the guards were distracted by the false emergency signals coming from around the globe. Kate and her team were able to swim close to the main processing center without being detected. Charges placed, Kate whispered into her underwater radio. Starting timer now. Above the surface, Colonel Pete Hamilton was coordinating attacks on Zilani energy collection points. His teams used modified human aircraft to drop interference devices near the crystal structures in space. The devices were designed to look like weapon impacts when they exploded. Hamilton watched from his command post as streaks of light appeared around the crystal structures. To the Zilani, it would look like they were under heavy fire from multiple directions. All teams report successful deployment, Hamilton said. The Zilani are taking defensive positions. The key to making the deception work was timing. Everything had to happen fast enough that the Zilani would not have time to investigate carefully. They had to believe they were under immediate attack and make quick decisions. Amy Foster was monitoring Zilani communications from the command center. Her computers could intercept and translate their emergency transmissions faster than the aliens could send them. They're requesting immediate backup from their home fleet, Amy reported. But wait, there's a problem. They're being told that no backup is available. Lisa leaned over Amy's shoulder to read the translations. What do you mean no backup? Zilani leadership is telling the Earth operation that they're on their own. All other fleets are engaged in battles elsewhere in the galaxy. Maria looked up from her computers. That's not possible. I made up those other battles. They're not real. Alex had a terrible thought. What if they are real? What if the fake battles we've been broadcasting are actually happening somewhere else? The room fell silent as everyone realized what this might mean. The signals they had been sending into space to confuse the Zilani might have been picked up by real alien civilizations. Their fake war might have started a real war, but there was no time to worry about that now. The deception was working too well to stop. Ben's voice crackled over the radio from Chile. The crystal structures are moving. They're changing formation into what looks like a defensive pattern. At the same moment, Kate's underwater explosives went off. The Zilani processing facility shook as fake weapon impacts destroyed key sections. Emergency lights flashed underwater as the aliens tried to figure out what was happening. Hamilton's aircraft attacks reached their targets at the same time. The crystal structures were hit by what appeared to be coordinated strikes from enemy forces. Some of the structures actually began moving away from Earth, trying to avoid further damage. It's working, Lisa said, hardly believing their success. They think they're really under attack. But then something unexpected happened. One of the Zilani crystal structures began broadcasting a message toward Earth. It was not the usual calm communication from the ambassador. This message was urgent and directed at all of humanity. People of Earth, the voice said, and everyone could hear the fear in it. Your world is under attack by forces we cannot identify. We are doing our best to protect you, but we may need to evacuate some of your population to safety. Lisa realized with horror what the Zilani were planning. They're going to take people off the planet. They think Earth is really being invaded, so they're going to save some humans by kidnapping them. Amy's computers showed Zilani ships moving toward major population centers. They're heading for New York, London, Tokyo, and a dozen other cities. Hamilton grabbed his radio. All teams, abort the evacuation phase. Do not let them take any humans off the planet. But it was too late. Zilani ships were already descending. Over major cities, people on the ground looked up in confusion as the aliens, who had been protecting them for months, suddenly started trying to evacuate them to safety. The irony was terrible. The Resistance had been so successful at making the Zilani think Earth was under attack that the aliens were now trying to save humanity from a threat that did not exist. "We have to tell them the truth," Alex said. Lisa replied firmly. "If we reveal that this was all fake, they'll know humans are capable of organized resistance. They'll implement their population reduction plan immediately." Maria had a different idea. "What if we don't tell them it was fake, but we make the fake threat go away?" "How?" Ben asked over the radio. He broadcast a fake victory message. "Make it look like the enemy forces were defeated and are retreating." Rick's voice came through. From his position near the crystal structures, "That could work, but we need to make it believable. The Zilani have to think they won the battle." Amy started typing frantically. "Die. Can create fake enemy transmissions showing retreat and surrender." "Maria, can you make it look like the attacking fleet is leaving the solar system?" "It's already working." "On it," Maria replied. Over the next 2 hours, the resistance teams worked to end the fake war they had started. Ben's radio telescopes broadcast signals showing the imaginary enemy fleet retreating. Maria created surrender messages from the fake aliens. Rick's devices stopped jamming Zilani communications so they could coordinate their supposed victory. Slowly, the Zilani ships stopped trying to evacuate people from Earth's cities. The crystal structures resumed their normal positions around the planet. The ambassador's voice returned to its usual calm tone. "People of Earth, the threat has passed. The hostile forces have been defeated and driven away. You are safe once again." But in the command center, Lisa knew that nothing was really safe. Resistance had proven they could fool the Zilani. But they had also seen how quickly the aliens could change from protectors to kidnappers. "We need to end this," Lisa said to her team. "Not just this operation, but the entire Zilani presence on Earth." Hamilton nodded. "The question is how. We've shown them that Earth is dangerous, but they're still here." Amy looked up from her computers. "I have an idea. What if we make them think staying here will get them in trouble with their own people?" Maria smiled as she understood. "Make them think their superiors are coming to investigate their operation." "Exactly," Amy said. "And when their bosses arrive, they're going to find a planet full of humans who know the truth about what the Zilani have been doing." Lisa looked around the room at her exhausted but determined team. They had fought the first round and won. Now it was time for the final battle, not against the Zilani, but against the lies that had kept humanity enslaved for almost a year. "All right," Lisa said. "Let's send these aliens home." The final phase of humanity's rebellion began 3 days after the fake war ended. Dr. Lisa Carter stood before the largest gathering of resistance members in history. Over 500 people had come to the secret meeting in an abandoned aircraft hangar in Nevada. They were scientists, soldiers, engineers, and ordinary citizens who had all figured out the truth about their alien protectors. "Today, we stop pretending," Lisa announced to the crowd. "Today we tell the world what the Zilani really are." Maria Santos had spent those 3 days preparing the most important broadcast in human history. She had gathered every piece of evidence the Resistance had collected, decoded communications showing the Zilani's real plans, video footage of the underwater processing facilities, data proving they were draining Earth's magnetic field. But most importantly, she had discovered something that would change everything. "Found their real communications network," Maria told the group. "Not just the local signals between ships, but the deep space transmissions to their home empire. And I found something interesting." She pulled up a translation on the main screen. "The Zilani Empire has strict rules about unauthorized harvesting operations. Any fleet caught running illegal operations on protected worlds faces severe punishment." Dr. Amy Foster smiled as she understood. "Earth is a protected world. According to galactic law, yes. Young civilizations are supposed to be left alone until they develop space travel. The Zilani broke that law when they came here." Alex Rodriguez looked at the evidence on the screen. "So if their superiors found out they were here, they would be arrested and their operation shut down immediately," Maria finished. Colonel Pete Hamilton stepped forward. "Then that's what we do. We call their bosses." Lisa nodded. "But first, we tell our own people the truth."
If we're going to expose the Zilani to the galaxy, humanity needs to know what we're fighting for.
The broadcast equipment had been built by Rick Davis using a combination of human and captured Zilani technology. It could reach every television, radio, and computer on Earth simultaneously. More importantly, it could reach into space to contact the Zilani Empire directly at exactly noon Eastern Time. Lisa Carter's face appeared on every screen on Earth. People stopped what they were doing to listen. In hospitals, patients using Zilani healing devices paused their treatments. In cities where Zilani ships patrolled overhead, crowds gathered to watch the broadcast. My fellow humans, Lisa began. For almost a year, we have believed that the Zilani came to protect us from dangerous threats in space. Today, I must tell you the truth. We are the threat they were sent to eliminate. The broadcast showed all the evidence the resistance had. Gathered the underwater processing facilities where sea life was being harvested, the energy collectors draining Earth's magnetic field, the decoded communications revealing plans to reduce human population. But Lisa did not just present evidence. She told a story of human courage and ingenuity. She showed how ordinary people had figured out the deception and fought back using their intelligence and determination. The Zilani thought they could manage us like animals, Lisa said. They were wrong. We are humans. We do not get managed. We manage ourselves. Around the world, people watched in shock as the truth was revealed. Some were angry. Others were frightened. But many felt something the Zilani had never expected. Pride. In New York, a crowd gathered in Times Square and began chanting Earth for Humans. In London, people surrounded a Zilani ship that had landed for maintenance and demanded answers. In Tokyo, protesters filled the streets carrying signs that said, "Go home, aliens." But the most important audience for the broadcast was not on Earth. Maria had aimed the transmission directly at the Zilani home empire, 27 light-years away. Using quantum communication technology reverse-engineered from Zilani devices, the signal would reach them instantly. The response came faster than anyone expected. 3 hours after Lisa's broadcast, new objects appeared in Earth's solar system. These were not the elegant crystal structures of the Zilani fleet. These ships were massive, dark, and clearly built for war. They moved with purpose toward Earth. The Zilani fleet panicked. Amy Foster monitored their communications as the local Zilani realized their worst fear had come true. Their superiors had discovered their illegal operation and sent an enforcement fleet to deal with them. They're requesting permission to complete their mission before the enforcement fleet arrives, Amy reported. They want to implement the population reduction plan immediately. Lisa felt cold fear wash over her. Trying to save humanity, had she doomed them instead? But then Colonel Hamilton's voice came over the radio from his position near one of the crystal structures. The Zilani fleet is moving away from Earth. All ships are retreating to the outer solar system. Dr. Ben Torres confirmed it from his observatory. The crystal structures are powering down their energy collectors. They're preparing to leave. On the main screen, they could see what was happening. The Zilani fleet was not planning to fight. The enforcement ships are complete their mission on Earth. They were running away. Maria intercepted their final communications. They're abandoning the operation. They're trying to escape before the enforcement fleet arrives. But the enforcement ships were faster. As the resistance watched from Earth, the two alien fleets met near Jupiter. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted only minutes. The Zilani ships were captured or destroyed by their own people. Then, one of the massive enforcement ships turned toward Earth. Lisa held her breath as the alien vessel approached. This was the moment of truth. Would Earth's real protectors be any better than the Zilani? No, the ship stopped just outside Earth's atmosphere and broadcast a message in perfect English. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Enforcement Division. The illegal operation conducted against your world has been terminated. The responsible parties will face justice under galactic law. The voice was different from the musical tones of the Zilani. It was deeper, more serious, but somehow reassuring. Your world has been confirmed as a protected, developing civilization. No further interference will be permitted until you achieve independent space travel. We apologize for the actions of the Zilani Protectorate. Lisa grabbed the broadcast equipment. This is Dr. Lisa Carter, speaking for the people of Earth. We thank you for stopping the Zilani. But we want to make something clear. We protected ourselves. We figured out their deception and fought back with our own intelligence and courage. There was a pause. Then the enforcement ship responded. We are aware of your resistance activities. Dr. Carter, your species' response to the Zilani deception has been noted in our records. It is unusual for a developing civilization to successfully counter an advanced harvesting operation. Alex looked at Lisa with amazement. They're impressed with us. The enforcement ship continued. As compensation for the illegal interference, with your world you may keep any Zilani technology you have acquired. This should accelerate your development and prepare you for eventual contact with the galactic community. Rick Davis laughed out loud. They're giving us a head start. Over the next few days, the enforcement ships removed all traces of the Zilani operation from Earth. The crystal structures were dismantled and taken away. The underwater facilities were destroyed. Even the Zilani healing devices stopped working, as their quantum processors were remotely deactivated, but humanity was not left defenseless. The technology they had reverse-engineered continued to function. Rick's interference generators, Amy's quantum computers, Len Maria's advanced communication systems all worked perfectly. More importantly, humanity had something they had never possessed before, confirmed proof that they were not alone in the universe. And the knowledge that they could defend themselves against threats from the stars. Dr. Kate Sullivan returned to her research with new purpose. The oceans were healing. From the Zilani harvesting, and fish populations were recovering quickly. But now she was also working on underwater spacecraft that could take humans to other worlds. Dr. Ben Torres pointed his telescopes toward the stars with new hope. Earth's magnetic field was stabilizing, and the atmosphere was returning to normal. But he was also tracking the movements of other civilizations, preparing for humanity's eventual expansion into space. Lisa Carter became the first Director of Earth's Defense Against Alien Threats, a new organization created by all the worlds, governments working together. Her first act was to establish a global network of monitoring stations to watch for any future alien visitors. But her second act was more important. She created the Human Space Initiative with one simple goal: to develop Earth's own space travel technology so that humanity would never again be dependent on aliens for protection. The Zilani thought they came to shield Earth from threats. Lisa said in her final broadcast to the world, they were wrong. Earth doesn't need to be shielded from the universe. The universe needs to be ready for Earth. 2 years later, the first human ship powered by hybrid Earth-Zilani technology left the solar system. Its mission was not to explore or trade, but to find other worlds where species like the Zilani were pretending to be protectors while secretly being predators. Humanity had learned an important lesson from their encounter with the Zilani. Sometimes, the greatest threat comes from those who claim to be helping you.